Okay, Armageddon. It's something that, it comes up in the news and religion a lot, and everybody seems to think it's coming. And boy, it's coming. Boy, it's coming. And I want y'all to try to stick with me. I'm going to show you a reveal through this, in the middle of it, towards the end, and at the very end also. I'm going to try to make it short. I'm not going to try to make it too long, but I want to show you what I found. And I think this has been found before by a few people, but maybe it just hasn't been put out there yet. And now I found a guy that's got it in one of his books, but you're not going to read a book anymore. Everybody's online. It's not going to get out. In fact, this may not get out that well. If you find this information, try to get it out to somebody if you find it to be true or rings true for you or gives you an understanding of what this really is. So Armageddon is supposed to be the end of the world. And there's signs and wonders that are supposed to happen. And they say that there's going to be a bunch of false prophets that happen. And after the false prophets, then finally people rise up against the one true God. And then it flips the other way. And then Armageddon and rapture happens. And so that's kind of a strange correlation of how it breaks down, but where can we find that out? Or, you watch for it and everything, and everybody knows to watch for it. Hopefully we won't ever build robots that are able to do the things that we have in movies like Terminator. And it's movies like Terminator and knowledge of that'll try to keep us from doing it in the future. It's this pre-buffered situation where it's like, you knew this, so you don't do that, And so are we just holding it off? Have we been holding it off forever? There's a couple of times it mentions in the Bible 1,000 years. And so is this supposed to be only lasted 1,000 years and somehow we're able to stretch this out, but it's still inevitable? Or how does this, all work? And everybody's looking for it. And a lot of religious people have, they keep quoting it and stuff. And I've seen so many videos, just hundreds, from things back in the 50s all the way up till now, actually even before then, and then written down things. It goes way back, but just videos that I've seen here on YouTube. One guy put a clip together of about 25 of them that I watched, and it took less than an hour, but because they clipped apart little pieces of the video, they just wanted to show you, here's a guy saying it's going to be here it is here it is here. And some of these preachers you've actually seen before, it's just kind of looked at as being null and void, but they all try to get pinned down with this whenever it's going to happen, and then it says nobody knows when it's going to happen. It's a big secret. The Bible tells you that. And so what is there, truth to all this, or how is this all going to work? Well, I want to tell you that even if you found it all to be fake, that one thing that you have in your heart right now, to be true if you're a believer, is that Jesus is not a liar. No matter what. You can pick this all apart and everything falls apart except for Jesus standing there, and Jesus is still not a liar, right? People that are believers that are watching now believe this, and so I go off that premise too. He spoke only truths, right? And so on. So we'll go with that idea, that love and that concept, and we'll explore scripture here real quick and see what he actually says when it's going to happen. But I want to let you know a few things before we look at this. Things that are found in the Bible, correlations I can put together. So we're going to look at a few little ideas here. The idea is that the end of the world comes and everything runs bad, right? And what's supposed to happen? Well, there's 7 judgments and seals. and there's a white horse, a red horse, a black horse, a green horse. They all go through these things. People have looked through this information like crazy. It seems like a bunch of allegory. There's dragons, people showing up on a white horse. One guy shows up, and the other one makes the one worship the other one, and then it goes. And what is all this? And what are the signs? And I swear there's one little clip down here. One of these guys clips, and it tells you where the end of the signs is. And well, let's look at what this guy says here real quick. Christ arrives at the end of the great war, Armageddon. The war will end in fire for the enemies of Israel. Christ comes with his holy ones, his raptured saints. Christ sets up an era of peace as ruler of the earth. Christ builds a millennial temple of Ezekiel. Right? And so it's the end of the thing in the another building of the temple. And of course, for this to have all happened, the temple has to be knocked down, no stone left standing, right? And that's another thing, Jesus tells you that there will be no stone left standing. And in the Bible, a generation is 40 years. I guess you can express it easier, but it's easiest by saying that, Moses and the Hebrews wandering in the desert had to wander for a generation, and then you find out that they keep telling you it's 40 years, and everybody said they've wandered 40 years in the desert, so a generation is 40 years. And I find this goes all the way back to King Nimrod, who died in his 40th year, and they call that a generation from then on. Kind of like that's a king's age right there. So that's 40 years, and everybody else has this with 40 years, and 40 years is a generation in the Bible. Well, the war will end with the fire of the enemies of Israel. Antichrist glimpses his holy ones, aliens and UFOs, some people believe. Antichrist sets up his era of peace under global dictatorship. Antichrist allows the building of the third temple of Jerusalem. Okay, so it's got to be destroyed one more time. The temple's got to be wrought, no standing on a stone. So definitely that's going to happen. And then you find that there's Armageddon. Let's see if it's on this little map here. Probably is, since I looked up Armageddon Bible, huh? But, well, man, this is just a fuzzy picture. But Armageddon should be right up in here. And it's not actually showing it here, but Armageddon is a mountain that's right up in here, and it's actually the mountain of Megiddo, and therefore Har means mountain, and so this is the mountain of Megiddo where it's all supposed to end at. And so kind of a neat thing people found out a long time ago, that Armageddon actually doesn't mean a thing like everybody even nowadays tries to put on it, but it's a place where a great war will end. And it's a belief that the Hebrews have this thing where that's going to be the end of all time, right? And I guess you believe in the Bible, so you're going to go with that too. And so, it even tells you he gathered them into a place in Hebrew tongue called Armageddon. Whenever you look that up, that's Armageddon, and that's the mountain of Megiddo. So let's try to look up a Bible verse and show you that Jesus is not a liar. I'll try to do this as quick as I can. But let's see, where are we looking at? We're supposed to be looking in Matthew. Now there's a bunch of places that he tells you this. In fact, I can grab my notes over here, which I probably should have done beforehand. And so I'll click on Matthew. Let me grab my notes here real quick. So there's a few places here that in the Bible, or in Matthew and a few others, he tells you when this is going to happen. And I'm caught up in the Hebrew version of this, but let me see if I can get to it real quick for you here, people. I'm going to go to Matthew 23:36. Then you got to do it again. No, it's not going to let me go. 23:36. Well, I'm going to have to roll all the way over. Really? That's not going to be too cool. Can I go to 36? Doesn't even want to connect to the website. Getting a bad connection all of a sudden. Okay. See if I can just get through this. It's not even pulling up the top board. Gotta have the kids back there putting up the internet, huh? See if I can get to it real quick. So anyhow, I'll just tell you what he says. Matthew 23:36 says, all these things shall happen and come upon this generation. Okay, and that generation word there is the same word they use that means the 40 years. Okay, and in Mark 9:1, he's telling this to the apostles. Now, what this is the Mount of Olives. And man, let me get to this real quick here. Can I get to... Will you let me do it this way? No. Can you show me the King James Version straight up and let me run with it? Let's try that. So, Matthew 24:34 says, verily I say to you, at the Mount of Olives, what happens here is, let's see if he'll let me pull up the next one. Really? Don't do that. So this is when Jesus speaks to the multitude. Y'all are pretty familiar with it. Don't do that. It did finally take. Gonna ruin my video here, bud. So this is the Mount of Olives. And he tells all the things and stuff about what happens and how they're hypocrites and does all that. And what ends up happening, and he, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou have killed the prophets and stoned them, or sent to thee, how would I often gathered your children together? He's telling that, they stoned the prophets back in the day and stuff. And so also he tells you in Luke 9:27, but I tell you the truth, there be some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the kingdom of heaven. And again, it gives a 40-year reference. And then there is the story of the parable of the olive tree. And an olive tree is known to be a 40-year generation. Okay? So, I guess I didn't get to show you that. So, let me go on and go right back here to pictures of Armageddon, if you will, and talk to you about this. So, that's 40 years. And so 40 years is kind of an odd, short number. I mean, that's way too short. 40, you've got to get multiples, and people have come up with this multiples and things, and 4,000 is, instead of 40, it must be 4,000 he's talking about. Well, they looked at it at 400 and said, here it comes, and it didn't, and all the multiples of that, and everybody keeps trying to give a date. Let me give you the date that Jesus just tells you right there is it's going to happen in a generation. And he dies on Passover, Easter, in the year 33 AD, right? And he's 33 years old whenever he gets killed. And so we're looking for 73 AD. If you look at history, what happens in 73 AD is a thing called the Jewish Revolt. And the Jews end up revolting against Rome, and they kill everybody off. And this is well known. Here's pictures of it. There's a famous arch that's got the whole scene of it. This is on the arch itself here. This is showing them carrying back all the Hebrew treasures. You might have seen this picture before. It's on the arch. To Jewish people, it's a terrible thing. This is whenever they lost the temple. But at this time, the temple got destroyed and there was no stone left standing upon it at all. And so they got some captives going back with them. But most everybody is all going with it. And this is the guy here that we're talking about. This man right here is supposed to be Titus. Titus Flavius. Right there. Okay? And so they're taking back all of this stuff to Rome. Well, could this have been Armageddon? Well, Jesus doesn't lie. He says it's going to happen to their generation. And everybody tries to point at the Bible and say, oh, look, it's our generation because he says generation. I just want to point out to you real quick that every generation that's ever happened has said the same thing, and they've all been wrong, but you're going to be right. Is that the way it works? Maybe not. So let's look at this date. Because the end of everything is supposed to happen. Well, rapture happened 7 years before that, so there can't be anything. Well, the Jewish revolt here happens from 66 to 73 AD. and there's going to be great trials and tribulations. Well, what is tribulations? Well, tribulations is people moving, large amount of moving of people. And what's trials? Well, we know what trials are. How about when the Jewish revolt happened and they came down and had trials over what had happened and everything, and then they tried to assimilate them into the church and make them put a Caesar thing. Y'all have heard this before. Make them put Caesar's image in their church whenever they had already been taught to take away all their images, because every image had been shown to be false and weird things like that. So how is this true? Well, you're really going to have to prove this self to you. You're going to have to probably watch my other video called Josephus, a Flavian Liar, and it'll show you the more correlation of it. I don't want to let this video get too far, but here we've got the dates. We've got 7 years of trial but tribulations, and in the story, they trapped them all in Jerusalem. They killed off everybody city by city and trapped them in Jerusalem, and then, like the Alamo, and then killed them all off. And if you look at the history, whenever they came by Josephus, that they had stormed the place on the last day, on Passover Day, and whenever they did, they had all killed themselves due to poison and knives and stuff. So they had elected people to kill each other. Again, that they'd killed them, and there was just piles of people in there. They say they couldn't get the doors open at first. There was just so many people piled up, and all dead. Not one left alive. They'd killed the children and everything, and rather than being captured, and that was their big Armageddon of the Hebrews. And just to make you want to maybe look at my Josephus Flavian Liar, what actually we have here is the New Testament is actually a mockery that was made by the Greeks and the Romans to deify this situation so that he would be looked at as a god like all the Caesars and everything did. And the truth of this is found in Josephus's writings when you find out that it correlates exactly, strangely, to every event Jesus does. When he starts at the Sea of Galilee, Titus's army starts at the Sea of Galilee. Whenever Jesus gets fishers of men and does the whole little story there, they say that there's a storm, it calms, they come and they kill everybody, and they trap people out in boats. They get out on the boats from people trying to swim away, and they gig them with fish gigs and pull them out of the water, and with nets, and they're catching men. And they make a joke about how they're fishing for men. Whenever he makes the blind see, this man gets told to lie, and he puts the eyes out of somebody. It's almost the opposite. In fact, he rubs dirt in a guy. You have not seen God, and he rubs mud in his freaking eye. I think that's taken out of the actual context, but you can find it in older ones. And actual older tales that aren't actually said to be written by Josephus about the exact same event, or he had put out a couple people's eyes. Anyhow, another important fact is whenever they get to the city, Jesus stands outside and he's giving parables, and one of his parables is, does not one, when he thinks of building a wooden tower, think of the cost first? Which sounds strange, but Titus, while he's staying outside the city waiting for starving them out, says they're going to build a tower, they're figuring out where they're going to put it, and he says the exact same thing right there. And I know you don't want to try to correlate and believe this and everything. I know you don't, but it's straight up true. You look at the other video I've got, you can find other people are starting to get this information, and they just haven't put it all together, because it all fits together and comes out to the truth that, just like you see with our ancient Bibles, the oldest ones are the Septuagint and things, and they're all written in Greek, is that it all comes from the Greek, and this is just another case of them assimilating a god in, just like they had done Cronus the Phoenician. And all the gods of their pantheon were not gods of their place, but gods of the world. And they were the world leaders to pull it all together. So everybody's gods is represented by the people that they had taken over, so they would feel okay with it and be assimilated in by it, rather than going against it and having something separate. The Hebrews never had that, and they went against him. Well, you come to find out that whenever they talk about how at first in Revelations, and people for years have known that Rome is the Revelation thing with the 7 crowns and all that stuff is the 7 hills of Rome, and they know this, so, but what they haven't put together is whenever he talks about how he first takes the Christians up to heaven, and then there's 7 years of trials and tribulations, and then everybody else goes. Well, that's actually him killing off a whole bunch of people, but also pulling out that exact amount of people that he had infiltrated in with that were Greeks, and pulled them out and saved them. And they were the first saved into the divine kingdom. Well, where did those people go? They went back to Rome. Rome and Greece, that's where they went back to. Look up my other videos on this and you'll be amazed at the truth that it shows here. Because, in Revelations 22:7, he actually basically says a phrase that means, thanks for waiting because I came fast. Well, fast isn't 2,000 years later. And he's going to come quick like a thief in the night. And there's all these, hints in the Bible of when the Jews are supposed to uprise. Even the story of 666, you find that this actually got kicked off in the year 66. In the 6th month, on the 6th day, at noon, which is known by their dating of the sun coming up, or timing to be 6 o'clock. Yeah, it's amazing. I've got another video too that's called The White Elephant in the Bible that you ought to look into too, and it'll show you where all this comes from in the Old Testament and how it all ties together with Saturn and Kronos and the Roman gods again. And that who we are worshiping today, if you're worshiping that Bible, Old Testament or New, are Roman gods. And if you're worshiping that Old Testament, you're worshiping Saturn, the satyr of the land of the Levant, that they had deified a long time ago and took as being their original progenitor. Yep, it's some knowledge that's finally coming out, and it's going to blow the socks off of all of this. And it's a weird thing, but now the Sumerians, which predate this Bible way far, had this idea that once it came back around the zodiac to the time of Enki, which would have been Aquarius and Capricorn, that once it came back around, that the veil would be lifted, that he would wash away the veil. He's the god of the waters, Ea. And he was, and which is shown in your Bible, anybody with IAH on the end of it, that's Ea, Isaiah, Ea. And so he's supposed to come back and change everything. And I remember the song whenever I was a kid, and it kind of was a heralding in the hippie age, where the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And if you look at our planet and how it changed, and how we've kind of come together again and found common languages and unbabblized ourselves with the confusion of languages, we've gotten back together where we understand each other. And then by utilizing each other together, we are taking off in an incredible rate. And we've been released. We've been washed. The only thing that hasn't been washed away is this old pagan tent god belief from much more than 2,000 years ago. It's kept mankind trapped for thousands and thousands of years under this veil of what basically is a lie. Check out my other videos. And if you like the information that was given to you here, give me a like. Throw me a subscribe, because I'm putting out a lot of videos here, and you'll be able to get the new ones thrown into your email or thrown at you. And pass this information on to people that might want to know, and people that need to know. The world needs to know this. Once the world comes out with this, then the gravity that's been holding us down, the problem, the thing that's, 60% of the people in the world believe in the fact that it's all fixing to end, so fuck it, why do good? Why try even harder? Why really accelerate yourself like the Egyptians did and build pyramids and things? Why do that anymore if it's all going to go away? So you get this holding back situation going on. If we freed ourselves from this holding back situation, then we would lose gravity. And instead of being able to jump 10 feet, we'd be like on the moon and be able to jump 30. And I'm not telling you that we're going to lose gravity here. I'm telling you that we're going to lose what's holding ourselves back as all of humanity. What's holding all of mankind back. Enjoy. Peace.